Thank you. It's my distinct honor to introduce our speaker this morning. You can all read Alicia Brown's bio posted on the website. Instead, I thought I would like to highlight those facets that make her the right senior official at the right time to discuss the issues that are currently challenging and facing NASA. Alicia's heads up NASA's legislative affairs and literally finds herself at ground zero in terms of working to lead the president and the administrator's effort to secure congressional support for the FY22 budget, whose details are supposed to be released sometime this Friday. There are signs of tentative bipartisan goodwill toward NASA with the unanimous approval of Senator Nelson as the NASA administrator and also in near record time. With that said, it's no secret that NASA's budget is highly discretionary and being pushed during a time of extreme political polarization. The good news for all of us is that, believe in the agency and its mission is that Alicia brings the skills and the hard-earned experience work on the Hill and most recently on the Senate Committee of Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Most importantly, she has a very close working relationship with the administrator that is essential to securing the funding success so critical to the slew of programs from Artemis, commercial and lunar robotic missions, partnering with private satellite telecom adventures, SLS, use of commercial crew launch services to earth science, to space science and aeronautics, and so much more of such profound interest to our community. If you've had the good fortune to work with Alicia, then you know her reputation for doing her homework and expecting you to do the same and asking the hard but important and probing questions. Alicia is known as someone who fights hard for ensuring the American taxpayer is on the winning side of those hard-earned funding dollars for civil space programs. Finally, as someone who has spent his professional career in industry, I personally find it reassuring that Alicia brings private sector experience to her portfolio, including managing government relations from the Harris Corporation. Finally, Alicia is a proud Seminole. I think that's still politically correct. From the great Florida State University with undergrad and graduate degrees in international affairs and economics. It is with great joy and my distinguished privilege to turn over to our keynote speaker, Alicia Brown.
Thanks so much, Ron, for that incredibly kind introduction. And thanks, Rob and Courtney and everyone over at the Washington Space Business Roundtable for inviting me here today. I was about to mention, my new boss or my new old boss, Senator Nelson, is actually a Florida Gator. So I think I have to keep a little bit quiet my affiliation with the Seminoles again. And then I saw Susan Nelson, another Gator alum in the space community, chime in there. So it's been an incredibly busy, I think, 125 days since I've joined this administration. I think you have all seen that. I recommend that every new administration land on Mars early in their tenure. It makes for a really exciting and busy first few months. And it really, I certainly knew coming from the Hill how much bipartisan support there was for NASA and our science and space missions. But really getting to come in early, right when Mars 2020 was landing, and then for the Ingenuity flights, I've really gotten to see, from a bunch of members who I didn't know were interested in NASA, how much we are really engaging with these folks and capturing their interest and capturing the interest of their constituents. We've done, when Mars 2020, right before it was landing and after the landing, we've done countless briefings for members. We were able to brief the Senate Democratic Caucus lunch, so had almost 50 senators engaged in asking questions with our Mars scientists. We've done some one-on-one events with members of the House and Senate, bringing in NASA scientists from the Mars 2020 mission and also students or businesses in those districts to really tie it together to members to show them how important this is to people all across the country. Beyond all the Mars excitement, we of course had the Crew 2 launch.
Alicia, oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry, you froze for a moment, so I just wanted to make sure your audio was coming through.
Got it. So
you are good, right? You are good right now.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah. So I'm doing this from home. Are, like a lot of you, I imagine, still working from home and challenged with bandwidth issues as multiple people are trying to use videos. So bear with me if I do cut out a bit. But I was just saying, beyond the Mars and Crew 2 or Crew 1 return, just really exciting to be able to engage with people, and looking forward to some additional crew launches. This a bit poignant to then have Senator Nelson's nomination announced. I had actually started working for him in Authorization, which is the path NASA is still on, both the dual path of commercial partnerships for low Earth orbit, while NASA
Alicia, apologies. It's cutting out again. Can I recommend that we actually connect directly to your phone line by going under the More Options icon and going to Switch Audio? Apologies, everybody. Going under More Options icon is the 3 little dots at the bottom of your screen.
got it. Change audio.
And then going to the top where it says Switch Audio and do the Call Me. And we'll put in your phone number there and then switch. And apologies, everyone. We do actually test these, and Alicia's audio and video was coming in perfectly. But as she's mentioned, unfortunately, technology sometimes just gets to us. Okay, Alicia, are you there? I see that you're connected. Alicia, are you there? And apologies, everyone. I'm literally working with her behind the scenes in just a moment. We're getting her back in. She's coming in right now. Alicia, are you there?
Test, test.
Yes, I can hear you. I can't see you. Is your video?
It says it's on.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. Hold on one moment. Let's see here. Okay, perfect. So we got you back up and running. Hopefully we are good to go. I'll interject if we run into anything again, but Alicia, go ahead, because we can see you and we can hear you at the moment.
Okay, great. So this sounds okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, everyone. So we have a lot of other exciting launches and other events that we're preparing for the remainder of the year, additional cargo and crew launches. We are hoping that as things with COVID get better and better, that we'll be able to start doing we have been doing some limited guest operations for launches, but hoping to really be able to open that up again later this year so that we can get more and more members and staff down to launches. I know you folks are interested in being able to invite members and staff to those events as well. Beyond the missions to ISS, we've of course got a lot of awesome science missions coming up. I think Lucy, Landsat, of course JWST, which Senator Nelson I think has invited every member of Congress to, and just really getting really excited about that one. And then leading into the Artemis 1 launch, hopefully sometime late this year, maybe early next year, which again, I think has just been so incredible to be here with Senator Nelson, to see crew and cargo going, SLS right around the corner, these building blocks that were really first authorized in the 2010 NASA authorization bill. As I think someone mentioned, we're expecting the budget to come out on Friday. you know, the political team, when we first joined NASA, spent a lot of time thinking about and building on the work of the transition team to think about how NASA can help fulfill Biden-Harris priorities. And I think you can really see this in the budget, the skinny budget that's come out, and more details that'll come out this Friday. But you have, you know, continued support for the Artemis program and for human space exploration. Obviously, big investments in climate, both in the earth science and on the aviation side. There's a big emphasis for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and investments in STEM education. And we're really trying to show that NASA is a part of the innovation ecosystem that's going to help the nation build back better. You know, in the president's jobs plan that he put out, there's a huge section on investments in research and development. And when the president spoke in Pittsburgh, he mentioned how investments in space technology have really helped to benefit life here on Earth and create jobs. So again, looking forward to being able to share more details in the budget with you guys on Friday and into the following week. Another thing that has been keeping me incredibly busy is, of course, the nominations. I think it was mentioned that Senator Nelson's nomination went through very quickly, which is true. I really can't take credit for that. I think it's really a testament to the goodwill that he built up as a senator, the bipartisan relationships, and how he conducted himself really helped ease the way for him to just seemed like accelerate every milestone along the nomination, from getting the hearing to, I think, a markup a week later and a vote by unanimous consent on the floor within a couple of days. And I know he was very excited and anxious to get in the building and start digging into the meat of his job. So we were glad we were able to get him confirmed so quickly. And I think, you know, having a boss who, as a person who does legislative affairs, having a boss who is an expert in the Senate has been really incredible, because there's certainly he needs no convincing that Congress is a really important partner in everything NASA does. And I think people might have seen, in fact, he was over in the Senate yesterday, over on the floor, talking to folks about why NASA is so important. And again, you know, how NASA can help build back better, help us remain competitive, and really talking to people about everything that we have going on. We have Colonel Pam Melroy, who was nominated to be NASA's Deputy Administrator, currently in process. Another just incredible nominee. We're very eager to have her confirmed. I think folks saw that she had a hearing last week and seemed to be met with bipartisan support there as well. We're hoping that she can get a vote in committee and confirmed sometime in June. We also have a really great nominee for NASA's Chief Financial Officer, Margaret Beauchoff, who has also been sent over to the Senate for consideration. She's got an incredible background in finance at a bunch of different agencies, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, working on you know, technology projects that I think will really make her an excellent fit for NASA. Also excited to get her on board. Folks might know CFO is what's called a privileged nomination, so we're hoping actually that she can also get teed up for a vote sometime in June.
And Alicia, you might have realized that we lost your video again.
Yeah,
oh, there you go.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm doing this on my phone, and when my phone rings, it goes to that screen, so apologies. Another just thing that's been obviously keeping me very busy, but I'm also really excited about, is the fact that there's a NASA authorization bill on the Senate floor right now. Certainly, since I have been working in the Senate, I have never seen a NASA authorization bill on the Senate floor where all the senators are filing amendments and really taking a look at the text. Maybe Marcia Smith is on the line and can tell me the last time that's happened, but every NASA authorization or every space bill that I ever worked on was a bill that went through on unanimous consent, not something that was actually on the floor and being debated. So I think that's pretty exciting. And the fact that it's tied to this Endless Frontier Act or the U.S. Innovation and Competitiveness Act, I think really shows that, you know, that as the Senate is looking at U.S. competitiveness in science and technology, I think it's a clear signal that NASA and investments in space are a part of that conversation. So I think that's pretty exciting to see. And just looking ahead, obviously we are going to get our budget on Friday, which will kick off a lot of activity for the appropriations cycle. We have already had Senator Nelson testify in front of House Appropriations last week on the budget. A little bit interesting because he was not able to testify on all the details that'll be out this week, but that committee is looking to get their bills written and marked up pretty quickly. I expect that we're going to have some additional budget hearings in June and maybe some additional hearings from the House and Senate authorizers on some topics of interest to them as they continue to work on the NASA authorization or other bills. So I think I've pretty much covered, have been working on, and a few things I see coming up. So happy to turn it over to you guys for any questions you might want to ask.
Hi, Alicia. I thought maybe I'd start the conversation off. Can you hear me okay? Yeah,
I
okay.
gotcha.
So maybe if you could just talk about what some of the areas or topics the Hill seems really interested in lately, that would be a good way to start off the conversation.
Yeah, you know, just like the diversity of NASA's missions, I think the Congress's interests in NASA have been pretty diverse. I think we've seen, so new chairman, Subcommittee Chairman Beyer on House Science has been really interested and engaged with NASA. Really all of our leaders on our committees have been. But you saw him kick off his year with a hearing on sustainable aviation. He also had a hearing on earth science. There's been, of course, a lot of interest in how NASA plays into research on climate change, and a lot of interest in how we could actually grow this portfolio and how NASA could do more. We've also had a lot of conversations and interest from the Hill on competitiveness, and particularly how NASA competes with China. I think that there certainly seems to be, and I don't think this is anything new this year, but for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of senators concerned about how the U.S. measures up in terms of competitiveness as they see how much China and other nations are investing in science and technology. In the space sector, the things that China is doing with their space station, their plans around lunar orbit. Of course, they just had a successful landing on Mars. I think that's actually been able to kickstart a lot of conversations on the Hill about, well, hey, what's NASA doing? How are we making sure we're still competing in this space? And again, I think, the bill that's on the Senate floor right now is in part a reaction to some of those things that are going on internationally. We've, of course, had a ton of interest in the Artemis program early on in this administration, a lot of concern that there would be continuity for Artemis. I think you saw the president, through the press secretary, has made a couple of positive statements, and then that was reflected also in the skinny discretionary budget that came out not too long ago and will be further detailed this year. But a lot of interest in the Hill on if we are maintaining the Artemis program, what the architecture looks like, when we will be able to do the first crewed landing and everything that comes beyond that.
Thank you, Alicia. So we do have our first audience question that came in from Courtney Stad. So the question is, both your boss and separately Chair Baer at the recent webinar indicated there might be some alternative funding sources for some aspects of NASA's funding needs. They might be supported in vehicles such as the so-called infrastructure bill currently being negotiated. So without getting crosswise with OMB, can you give us some information or give us some thoughts on whether there might be some legislative vehicles for supporting NASA that our community should be tracking?
Yeah, and thanks for that caveat. I always try not to get in trouble with OMB or make any news, but the president outlined the American Jobs Plan. I think there are several categories where it seems like NASA could fit in, things like investments in research and development, investments in climate, investments in infrastructure. I think Senator Nelson testified last week about, or was asked questions last week about things like the Artemis program, the landers, and NASA's infrastructure. And, I think our perspective is we are communicating what our needs are to Congress or trying to be responsive to their questions. It does seem like there is potentially some other vehicles out there this year, how NASA could get funding outside of the appropriations process. That's, I think up to Congress to figure out how they want to fund this. We're just trying to provide Congress with information. And from my conversations with folks on the Hill, it seems like the jobs bill, infrastructure bill, everything is pretty early in the work. So not totally sure yet what the scope of those bills look like, but we have certainly been asked and answered a lot of questions from the Hill about, NASA's projects or things we have going on in several of those areas that they are looking to include. And I think the Endless Frontier Act is a good indication of that.
Thank you. The next question comes from Matthew Jones. And the question is, can you share any updates on NASA's thinking about how to maintain a U.S. human presence in LEO?
These are certainly conversations that we are having with human exploration and the NASA leadership. I think it's no surprise that Senator Nelson and other leaders in NASA want to maximize our use of ISS and are looking to see how long we could feasibly extend the life of ISS. At the same time, making plans and investments in the future, whether it's a commercial platform and how we can support that new industry so that we do have a place to go once ISS has to be retired. I think more to come on that, but it's certainly a top priority for Senator Nelson or Administrator Nelson.
Thank you. So I'll ask another question here that we have for you, Alicia, but I'll also say that moving forward for the rest of this event, if someone has a question that they want to ask, do please send it into the chat, and we'll actually let you ask that question in person to Alicia. So our next question is about the Earth System Observatory, and we're wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this, because NASA announced it the other day.
Yeah, so when the discretionary budget came out, folks probably saw that one of the areas that was called out was an increase for Earth science, I think about $250 million. So I think we're starting to detail how exactly we would use that $250 million. And again, more details will come out with the full president's budget. But you're right that the administration did start talking about this on Friday, that we are looking to invest in a new Earth Systems Observatory. I would characterize this as, I think this is how we are going to fulfill the rest of the decadal recommendations for Earth science, but it's really going to have a huge impact on how we measure climate, which is of course NASA's expertise, how we measure pollution. I think I'm not an expert on exactly what we're going to be doing, but all of the Earth's observables that were recommended, I think, in the last decadal, that's what this Earth System Observatory is going after.
Thank you. So the next question is from Susan Nelson. So Susan, if you'd like, you can go off mute and you can ask the question.
Now I have to read it. Sorry about my voice. So last week during the hearing, Alicia, and sorry if this isn't a great question, the administrator referenced a few notable items that would be discussed in the infrastructure bill. Should we assume that we won't see funding requests for such items in the full PBR? He mentioned HLS, NTP, and suits. Are you able to discuss that at all? Or?
I don't think I can discuss yet what is or isn't going to be in the full budget request. I think that what you could take from that is I think he was trying to respond to questions from the members about how we could accelerate the next phases of Artemis. So he was suggesting that the infrastructure bill is an option for them. But I think those are the areas where we see we need additional investment. First, for the Artemis piece, we need additional investment in the sustainable landers. Everything beyond that first moon landing, we need additional investments in spacesuits. And then looking forward to Moon to Mars, obviously propulsion is a key piece of that. And so that's another area where we've recommended accelerated funding.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question comes from someone signed in as owner. It's about active debris remediation. So if that attendee wants to ask the question, please do so, but just take yourself off mute, otherwise I can ask it. Okay, I'll just go ahead and ask the question. So the question is, will NASA seek funding for active debris remediation, and if so, when?
Again, I think that's something that I'm going to have to defer to the budget request, which will come out on Friday. And I truly don't know the answer to it. So, but I do think NASA sees that we have a role to play in the larger conversation about debris remediation. I think NASA has a lot of the expertise to help come up with norms and standards, and we've already done so about debris and also space traffic management. I think that we are very excited to see that the president or the vice president is going to continue the National Space Council, and hope that this is an issue that the Space Council might want to tackle, and NASA would certainly like to lend our expertise as part of that forum.
Thank you. So our next question is about combating climate change. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how sustainable aviation fits into the administration's goals for combating climate change.
Yeah, I think we're all really excited about this one. And just, my perspective on the Hill, for the past few years, it seems like, it seems like there is a renewed interest in the first A in NASA, as Administrator Nelson likes to say, and particularly in how investments in early stage R&D for aviation could help climate change. I think you've seen a number of bills from various senators and members of the House looking to increase these investments. We've got the X-57 Maxwell, the first all-electric plane that's going to have its first flight, I think, sometime later this year. But we're looking to expand our investments in propulsion, in materials research, and things like looking at the actual design of aircraft bodies. And I think that we are going to have I hope that we're going to have some good partners in Congress for this, because there certainly seems like a lot of interest. Again, I think this is something that'll be detailed a little bit more when the budget comes out, but I do think that you can already see that there is support in the budget for these efforts. So again, more to come on that.
Thank you. So we do have an audience question from Edward about STEM education. So Edward, would you like to ask that question? If so, please take yourself off mute.
Edward Goldstein here. As part of NASA's interest in boosting STEM education outreach, are you thinking about citizen science programs in conjunction with NASA research?
That is a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but it seems like an exciting opportunity. I know that that's something that we looked at when I was still on the committee about how we could expand federal agencies working with citizen scientists. You saw probably that there is a pretty big increase for STEM education in the president's budget. I think we're moving to $140 million. I don't know if we've totally detailed how we're going to spend that money yet. But I think in general, we are looking across the agency and not just in the Office of STEM Education to see how we can reach more and more people across the country and engage with them. And I think the Science Mission Directorate is one of the best places to do that.
Okay, thank you for that answer. The next question comes from Marcia Smith.
Hi, Alicia. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, Marcia.
So I was wondering whether or not there's any interest on the Hill about extending ISS to 2030 and funding commercial LEO, so there's something to come after ISS. You mentioned there was a lot of interest in Artemis, but I don't sense that there's an appreciation of the urgency of making decisions about LEO. It's almost as though everyone's so focused on the moon, they're forgetting about LEO. So can you share anything about the level of interest that members have in ISS and post-ISS?
There certainly is interest, from the usual suspects on extending ISS. And I think the ISS extension to 2030 is actually in the bill that's being considered on the floor right now. I don't want to speak for Congress, but I sometimes wonder if it, we've extended to 2024, it's only 2021. Sometimes things don't come to Congress's mind until, it is kind of the last minute, as you know. But I would say NASA is already doing the work right now to make sure that we and our partners could technically extend ISS and hope to, make recommendation to the administration and to Congress about what we think makes sense there. And then at the same time, like you mentioned, are already talking about what follows on next. And of course, NASA wants to start investing in both the supply and demand side of ISS, and we are doing a lot of work to members about that. And I think that there is an appreciation and a desire among members, at least from what I've seen, to make sure that we do have a persistent capability to have humans in low Earth orbit. I think the questions that you've seen, members ask are, well, what's the right kind of research and development we should be investing in? How do we truly create, a space economy? I think they're smart questions, and we're excited to continue that dialogue with them.
Okay, our next question comes from Andy Bunker.
Hey, good morning, Alicia. So you mentioned earlier how shocking it is that a NASA bill is on the Senate floor already. Completely agree. And also the Space Act that was included in there. So some discussion has gone on about possibly another commercial space bill later this Congress. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what the administration might like to see in such a bill that hasn't been addressed recently. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. I haven't seen you in so long, so good to hear your voice. So yeah, I think the NASA authorization bill and the Space Acts that were added are bills that the Congress has been working on for a long time, as you know. And there are a ton of, commercial space type issues that haven't been addressed that are, persisting across administrations and across Congresses. I can't speak to what the administration is hoping the Congress will tackle, but I think NASA itself is certainly interested in being a part of the conversations about debris, congestion in space, how we're going to authorize these, new space activities. So I think, again, that's kind of things that we have to wait for the National Space Council to take on. But NASA has said previously that there are a bunch of areas out there that impact NASA and government missions, and we'd like to be part of the conversation.
Okay, the next question is from David Chavrant.
Yes. Hi, Alicia. I'm looking at a number of recommendations that have been made over the years to produce propellant and for NASA to agree to purchase propellant and other materials that are derived from lunar in situ resource utilization. That's to help stimulate the economy, the development of commercial industry extending out to the moon. Is there any plan coming up in the near future to try to make those kinds of commitments?
I am not aware. This is an area I just don't know too much about. So I am not aware, but that doesn't mean that there's not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to our next question from Courtney Stad.
I'm back, Alicia. There are unconfirmed reports that NASA headquarters might be considering resurrecting the Office of Program Analysis and Evaluation, PA&E. Many, as you may recall, was intended to provide the administrator with objective and transparent analysis of particularly major NASA programs. Can you provide any insight into whether the leadership team is in fact interested in revisiting a P&E function? Thank you.
First of all, I'm aware of this proposal because I think it was included in the House Science Authorization Bill last year. So I think that it's something that is kind of in the conversation or in the mix among a lot of people, including Congress. I think I don't know about PA&E's office specifically, but I think we are looking at what are the tools available to make sure that we, when we're doing cost estimates and providing those estimates to the public and to the Hill, how do we make sure we have fidelity in what we're doing? Because I think all of that and being able to make sure that we're not constantly having to revise estimates or revise up will give people just more confidence and particularly the Congress more confidence in the programs that they're authorizing and appropriating. So I'm betting that there'll be more to come on that, Courtney, but I'm just not privy to those conversations.
Very helpful. Thank you, Alicia.
So our next question is from Kate Maliga. So Kate, go ahead.
Hi, Alicia. It's Kate Maliga from Aerojet Rocketdyne. Thanks for taking time. I'm going to not ask a policy question, but just a big picture question. Let's fast forward 2 years. How would you measure your success? What are the 1 or 2 things you would like to say, yeah, I got that done. That's what really was important to me.
Oh, good question, Kate. So many things. I think this is maybe less measurable, but the most important thing to me is that we grow our coalition of support on the Hill. And that's certainly something that we need help from all of you guys on. There, the cycle of Congress is that people come and people go, and unfortunately, we've lost a few key champions over the past few years. I think we might be losing some more in the next couple of years. And so we really need to be filling our bench and reaching these members early in their career to get them excited about NASA. And I think that NASA has so many tools and so many programs to be able to reach and create a big tent coalition that we don't just have folks who care about human space exploration, but we have folks who care about planetary science or climate change and earth science, or folks who care about investments in technology. So we're really looking at legislative affairs as kind of a more boutique industry. How can we really target members, come to them where they're at, come to their districts, come to their states, put on events with them with businesses in their states or small businesses or schools, to really bring that message to them of why NASA, and to convince their constituents of why NASA really matters to them. I think we need to be really telling our story in this way that really makes sense to, the everyday person who's not paying attention to, NASA every day. I also, of course, would love to see us to get some additional funding and to get additional support for across all of our missions, particularly the ones that I think are the Biden-Harris priorities that I mentioned up top. But the Artemis program, our climate, both in earth science and aviation, I think those are the areas that we're really focused on right now.
So thank you for that. The next question is from Michael Mealing about Mars. Michael, if you want to come off mute and ask the question, otherwise I'll go ahead and ask it. All right, I'll ask the question. So there are plans by several companies to move quickly over the next decade, whether it's commercial space stations or people on Mars by 2026. Is there any sense in Congress of how they might respond to the commercial sector moving faster than NASA or other agencies over the next 4 years?
I think, I noticed in Senator Nelson's hearing, the question he got asked over and over again, other than things on STEM education, were about partnering with commercial companies. So I certainly think there's a lot of interest, and just to see how much that has changed in Congress over the last 10 years. It certainly seems like there's a lot of interest among members with, telling NASA to partner more and more with these commercial companies and leverage their interests and capabilities. I hadn't heard 2026 before, though. That would be pretty exciting.
Thank you. So the next question is from Jeff Faust.
Hi. You mentioned the Senate version of the NASA authorization moving through pretty quickly, basically the version that I think they passed back in December. I'm just curious, do you have any insights on the approach you expect the House to take? Are they going to use the Senate bill as a starting point, or are they going to craft their own? And if the latter, are there provisions in the Senate bill you definitely want to see in the House bill, or maybe provisions you don't want to see in the House bill? Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I don't want to speak too much from the House, but I would anticipate that they're going to put together their own bill. Obviously, they had their own bill last year that they started to mark up, and then I think had to take a pause because of COVID. I believe that it's that they're going to either dust that off, or I guess I don't want to say start over, but I think that's at least where they're starting from. And so I'd anticipate at some point the two would come together and conference those bills. Obviously, I worked on the Senate authorization bill, so I'm probably a little bit biased. But I know that it was exciting last year to have all 100 senators support the Artemis program for the first time. It was, and it really, I think, authorized the program as how NASA is executing it right now in partnership with commercial companies for the lander system, continuing to use the SLS, Orion, and Exploration Ground Systems architecture. So I would really like to see that carried forward. In general, a balanced, I think the Senate bill was great because it did take a balanced approach to NASA, as I think everyone would like to continue to see. Exploration, space science, aviation, STEM. I think there was a lot of good stuff in there in all those areas. That said, I haven't honestly spent a lot of time looking at the House bill because we were so focused on the Senate bill last year. I imagine there's really great stuff in there as well. So look forward to those two kind of coming together, and hopefully we could get a NASA authorization bill signed into law sometime this Congress.
So our next question is maybe not so much of a policy question, but a question maybe just to you personally, which is, how has the transition been from working on the Hill providing oversight to now working in an executive agency in charge of a major program office?
Well, it has been interesting. You know, I had people in NASA kept asking me, is Congress part of the federal government? Like, yes, but it's very different than an agency. It's obviously a lot larger, maybe less streamlined. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know, there are a lot of other steps to getting things approved through an agency, a little bit more streamlined in Congress. I always used to say that as a staffer on the Hill doing work on NASA, I always thought we were in a bit of an interesting place to compare to some of our other colleagues, because we were providing oversight of NASA policies and programs, but I think a lot of us also really loved NASA or love NASA, and were also in support of what the agency was doing. So we were, you know, on one hand overseeing the agency, but also cheerleaders for its success. So I didn't necessarily seek out this position, but couldn't pass down the opportunity once approached to ask my interest to come work for what I think is the best agency in the federal government. But it certainly is a very different place. I'm still learning, you know, virtually where the bathrooms are and where the cafeteria is. We'll have to learn that in real life at some point. I will say, though, at least I've been able to come into an agency that I did know pretty well, knew the structure, knew most of the major programs. So at least I had a little bit of leg up and not having to learn something from scratch, as I'm sure many folks are doing in the government right now.
Thank you for that feedback. The another question we have is about the Senator Cantwell language in the Human Landing System, the NASA authorization bill. And the question is, does NASA have any concerns about that?
Thanks for that question. So yeah, we've been working closely with the committee on the language that Senator Cantwell did add. I'm not sure if people are aware that the language has changed since it came out of the committee markup. And what they have on the Senate floor right now, I think we don't have any concerns with. In fact, Senator Olson called Senator Cantwell to thank her, because the authorization, I think, is more than we're expecting in the president's budget and could really help us accelerate a sustained lunar program. But I think that the language as written gives us enough flexibility to implement the program in a way that, I mean, is closely tracked with how NASA would like to implement.
Thank you. So we have another audience question coming in from Brett Silcox. So Brett, do you want to go ahead and ask the question?
Hey, Alicia, great seeing you. As you know, as a former congressional staffer, sometimes there's challenges with communications from NASA and Congress on specific issues. And a lot of times that creates a vacuum within the Congress on trying to get the information they need out to write appropriation bills, write authorization bills. Do you expect to make any plans on trying to improve those communications, kind of try to keep that upbeat or up tempo on how Jim Bridenstine was actively engaged with Congress? I assume Administrator Nelson is going to be the same, but are you making any shifts in the kind of plans there to keep that communication strong with the agency and Congress?
So, Brett, maybe you should come back to NASA and help me with that. But I think, you know, honestly, one thing that I felt really good about coming into NASA is that I knew a lot of the folks in legislative affairs who have been doing this for a long time are incredibly good at their jobs, incredibly professional. So at least I knew I could sleep easy at night knowing that I didn't have anything to worry about. They, I think, do an incredible job of navigating this huge agency to provide feedback and comments and advice to members and to staff as they're writing bills. What I think we need to do a little bit better of a job on, and the Bridenstine leadership and himself and their team, I think, did an incredible job of trying to reach members who aren't traditionally engaged in NASA. And I think a lot of their efforts were focused on the Artemis program. I'd like to continue that, but broaden the aperture to, like I said earlier, try to find members in their districts and the issues that they care about. I think COVID actually has given us a lot of unique tools to be able to do that, that we don't actually have to fly everywhere. We could do this virtually. And you've seen that even, you actually get more and more participation using these virtual platforms. So I certainly think that we want to take those things that the last team did, expand upon them. What I need right now mostly is help. We need some additional bodies in legislative affairs to help execute some of these things because, you lose a few folks between administrations and we're still staffing up right now.
Thank you for that answer, Alicia. So I think that with that, it's going to wrap up today's session of WSBR. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining. And thank you, Alicia, for your thoughtful remarks, and for Ron Dolan, along with everyone at TIP Technologies, for sponsoring today's event. We would like to remind everyone to please join us for our silent auction on June 16th, which will provide an opportunity to bid on a variety of interesting and exciting items, and which all proceeds will go to education initiatives that WSBR takes part in. And we will also be announcing a speaker for this event in the coming days. So the silent auction will take place via WebEx, and the link will be sent out shortly. If you're not yet on our mailing list, I'd invite you to please sign up by going to our website, www.wsbr.org. And thank you to everyone for joining us today, for supporting WSBR, and we look forward to seeing everyone at our June 16th event.
Thanks so much.